am from Germany and worked at an old people's home in a little German town at that time. The facility was in a rural area on the outskirts of town. One night, I had night shift with a new coworker whom I never worked before. He was in the mid-50s wearing little round glasses and for some reason seemed a little strange to me on the first sight. There always were only 2 workers alone in the facility at night, and our job was to watch after over 100 rooms on 3 floors and make control rounds through the whole facility. We weren't allowed to use the elevators for security reasons at night and had to use the stairway instead. I remember the strange weather that night. It was stormy and wild outside when my shift started at about 10 p.m. At this time, most of the personnel was gone. Only one older nurse was in the station room on the 2nd floor, where we had our headquarters at night. Me and my coworker started our first round through the facility, using the stairways, which had heavy doors we had to close slowly and carefully every time to avoid noise. Everything was quiet. Most old people were sleeping already, and after we checked all rooms, we sat down in the 2nd floor station's room and finished some paperwork. The old nurse was gone, all doors to the outside shut, and the house was completely quiet when we were sitting on the table. After 15 minutes, suddenly a heavy door in the stairway was smashed hard. We looked at each other without saying anything and immediately run in the stairway. I run up the 3rd floor and my workmate sprinted down to the ground floor. We saw nothing and nobody. We even checked the stairway windows, all were closed. We concluded that someone must have been in the stairway. As we found nothing, we continued our tour, starting from the 3rd floor down to the ground floor. From there on, I could not stop thinking who the hell would sneak around the floors at the middle of the night. It was about 2 a.m. when we had to change the double sheets from an old invalid man who pissed in his bed. I stood in the corner of the room beside the bed, backed up against the wall. My coworker was on the other side of the bed. While I was concentrating on the door, suddenly my coworker freaked out, screaming at the old man out of nothing, ripping around the sheets. His face got an angry, creepy look, and I was totally shocked and not able to say or do anything. I just watched this creepy guy in front of me with the totally black windows behind him and the door leading to the dark floors where some freak sneaked around unseen. I stood there pressed on the wall in the corner of that room and felt totally lost, surrounded by psychopaths. We finally reached the ground floor and everything was quiet, only the wind blowing around the house. Suddenly we heard a dropping sound, like if someone dropped a knife or something metallic. The sound came from the kitchen area. We ran to the closed glass door where the sound came from. It was a long dark hallway with a back door leading to the trash cans and a parking lot at the end. We opened that door and searched every single room. Again, we found nothing. Some hours later, we started our last tour for this night. We split it up this time and I checked the rooms like usual. When I looked in one room, an old lady was awake and sat on her bed. She asked me if I was in her room 5 minutes ago. I said no and that we just started our tour. She told me that 5 minutes ago she clearly heard someone entered her room. She asked who's there but didn't get any answer back. Then the door was closed again. I told her to push the alarm button next time. I think it's unnecessary to say how I felt for the next hours of the night every time I entered a room or walked around the corner. I was more than glad when this damn shift was over. Some days later, I met the old nurse who left the facility late at night and told her the story. She told me that the back door to the kitchen area was wide open when she went to her car that night she left us. She reached the open dark back door from the parking lot and called if somebody was there. Suddenly she got a very bad feeling, turned around and drove off quickly. She was totally scared and tried to reach and warn us, but she lost our number. I told her that the back door was definitely closed when we checked the area. We never found out what creepy freak sneaked around there at night, and many night shift workers reported similar experiences the following months. Anyway, I'm glad I don't have to work there anymore. I'll definitely never work any night shift again. I worked on an ambulance that does both 911 and generic transport, so for this call my partner and I, both females, took a lady back home from the ER. Now this neighborhood is kinda sketchy, and we drive down a block away from the known hooker/pimp street so we can finish our paperwork and clean equipment. We're parked opposing traffic on a curb in the ghetto suburbs at 1 a.m. I had just finished cleaning and I'm standing at the passenger side with the door open, while my partner is sitting in the passenger seat still finishing her report. All of a sudden, we hear a girl's voice a few doors behind us screaming, "No! No! Let me go!" While a guy yells, "You can't take her." Partner and I look at each other, then down the road because now we hear some revving like an angry lawnmower. All I see is headlights coming my way. I take a flying leap into the cab across my partner's lap as she slams the door behind me, just in the nick of time because the car comes within literally inches of our rig. I'd have been crushed if I didn't have almost cat-like reflexes. As the car goes by, we see that a bald, tatted up Hispanic guy is the driver, and he's just casually flicking a cigarette out the window. In the back seat is a girl in her skivvies, desperately pounding on the window. Meanwhile, on the outside of the car is a dude in his tighty whities. He has some weird Spider-Man grip, with one hand holding onto the roof and his feet braced against the door. He's also punching the window. I flick on the lights and sirens hoping to scare the driver, and my partner gets on the radio telling dispatch a brief rundown and to send cops to our location. Driver isn't fazed in the least by our display. He stops at the four-way, as one does in such a situation, looks at us in his mirror, flicks the cigarette, and takes off. Naturally we, two unarmed females, give chase. Driver is cruising, weaving this way and that, trying to shake Captain Underpants. We see the dude fall and run after the car. A moment later the girl comes flying out of the car in a very ungraceful tuck and roll. The two take off behind one of those giant power breakers you sometimes see on city streets, while the driver finishes his Mario Kart impression and floors it around a corner. We follow around the corner ourselves and stop to check for plate number, but alas, he's sporting a lemon lot ad. Since he's gone, we presume it's safe to get out and actually do our job, take care of those injured. We hop out with the aid bag and my partner keeps watch while I run to the giant power thing, but the nearly naked duo is gone. At that moment, 5 squad cars pull up and ask if we're the ones who called for backup. We restrain ourselves from asking if they see any other freaked out EMTs in the neighborhood and give them the story. They ask where the two who escaped the car went and we respond that we don't know. They ask for a description and possible direction. We tell them that if they go left and make another left 3 streets down, then stop shortly before EC Boulevard, they'll see 2 people in underwear and likely covered in road rash. I helpfully add in whatever the design was on the guy's shorts and they just stared at us for a minute. Realizing we were serious, 3 cars take off. Maybe 5 minutes later one radios and saying he found them. Here's the kicker, they denied everything. No car, no kidnapping, no chase. Of course they can't explain why they're nearly a block away from their place wearing only enough to not break any indecent exposure laws, their lack of shoes, or the copious road rash all over them. Since technically they didn't do anything wrong and they had no desire to press charges or be treated by us, they were let go. I used to work the night shift at a casino in Oklahoma. I was a janitor on the gaming floor. My duties were simple: clean ashtrays and clean the bathrooms throughout the casino. At the time of this story, I was 18. I'm really small, so at the time I was 5 feet and probably 100 pounds. I'm just a small guy. Early one morning around 5 a.m., I was doing my final cleaning in the bathroom I was assigned to that shift. The casino was dead silent at that time of day. While I was moping, an older guy, probably in his 60s, walked in. "The floor is a little wet, so watch your step," I politely told him. "Hello," he acknowledged. He walked up to a urinal and I continued mopping the floor. The man was standing at the urinal for over 5 minutes. At one point, I noticed him turning his head and looking at me. When he finally finished, he walked up to me. What he said really disturbed me. "Hey, I'm just letting you know. I couldn't take a piss because you just gave me the biggest boner." I stood there for a second to gather my thoughts. "Thanks," I said enthusiastically. I was on shift, so I had no choice but to be polite. The man smiled at me and walked out the door. When he was finally out, I started laughing, not because it was funny, but because I was extremely shocked. That's never happened before. A couple minutes later, he walked back in. I was almost done cleaning. The man walked up to me and flashed a $5 bill. "I just have to give you a little tip. Is that okay?" the man said. I said, "Sure." I reached for the money, but as soon as my hands touched his, he gripped my forearm and pulled me against him. At that point, I was using all my strength to pull myself back, but I couldn't break free. He had me in a big bear hug. As I was struggling, he put his hand on my butt and started squeezing. "You're just too hot," he said. I finally managed to break free and run out the bathroom. On my radio, I requested that security comes here immediately. Security got to me within 2 minutes. I tell the guards what happened, but the sad part is, we can't really do anything. He's a patron here and management will not like if the police gets involved. If you have any other problems with him, let us know and we'll take care of it, the security guard said. Of course, I thought to myself. I never saw that guy again, but I quit that job 2 months later.